Okay, we're going to dedicate tonight and next, apparently it's going to be on Wednesday, not on Tuesday, to the Megillah. And what I want to do with you is look at two different viewpoints on what happens in the Megillah. It's best if you have the Megillah in front of you, but if you don't, I'll try to read everything that's relevant. The idea is that tonight we're going to look at it from a political point of view. We're going to look at the Megillah as a political story. It's not a religious story, because even though Jews are involved, that doesn't make everything into religion. The sages, Chazal, they teach us how there's a spiritual message here. But you can't really understand the spiritual message until you understand the pshat. And the pshat is that this is a political story. How do I know that that's the pshat? Because the Megillah was written to be included in the Chronicles of Persia. They wrote it. This is written. The reason it doesn't have Hashem's name in it is because this is the exact document that they put into the library, the Chronicles of Persia. So non-Jews wrote this. What do I mean? Mordechai and Esther wrote it, and then non-Jews copied it into Persian, or whatever they were speaking back then, and it was part of the official library of the history of Persia. So the Persians were not interested in what we think happened spiritually. The Persians are interested in what happened politically. For them, this is a political story. And so the way the Megillah was written, it was written as a political story. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. Next week, we're going to take this political story that we're going to analyze tonight, and we're going to learn it according to Chassidus. That this political story, it's a lot like what we do with current events, except these are past events or historical events. We're going to take them, and we're going to explain them. We're going to explain them in such a way that you'll see the Chassidus in it. Okay? So let's start. It's funny. Okay. And it came to pass in the days of Achashverosh. He is Achashverosh who reigned from Hodu to Cush. So why do you have to say which Achashverosh this is? Because there was probably more than one. Is there any chance you can bring me one? Yeah. Thank you. I'm parched. I didn't drink all day. So I didn't have time. So Achashverosh, there's many of them. How do you say Achashverosh in Persian? Anybody know? Achashverosh. Nope. Achashverosh is how we say it. They say it Artaxerxes. Oh, yeah, you saw this probably. It's a well-known thing. Even in the book of Nehemiah, we have his real name, Artaxerxes. That's how it's said in Hebrew, a transliterated Hebrew version of what the Persians called him, Artaxerxes. So it's Artaxerxes. How do you say Xerxes in Hebrew? Very important to know. Koresh. The king that's called Koresh, he's the one who gave the edict to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. The way we say his name is Koresh, and the way they say his name is Xerxes. Now, it's written Xerxes, but I'm not sure how it's really supposed to be pronounced. So the closest is Tachshasta. That's like, I guess, how you're supposed to say it. Anyway, so there's this guy, and he's sitting on his throne. What does that even mean? What do you mean? There's a king that doesn't sit on his throne? Have you ever heard of a king who doesn't sit on his throne? So what does this mean that he's sitting on his throne? That he had to capture his throne. When you say that, what you're meaning to say is that this king didn't start out as a king that was accepted by everyone. He had to kill people. He had to do all kinds of stuff. Like, for instance, to make... Thank you so much, really. He had a lot of difficult work in order to make himself a king. And this is going to figure into the rest of the plot. Why was he not a regular king? Because he was not in any royal line. He came out of nowhere. Who did he marry? Vashti. Who is Vashti? She's the heiress. She's the true royalty in the family. Who is she? Anybody know who she is? She's Nebuchadnezzar's granddaughter. Nebuchadnezzar he has a whole history, this guy. He started out in the war against Yerushalayim in Chizkiah's time. And if you remember, the Assyrians came with an army of 150,000 people, 180,000 people. And they were encamped outside Yerushalayim. And they said, give up, because we're going to come in and we're going to kill everyone. And Chizkiah doesn't give up. And he's not willing to let them in, but he has no way to fight them. And what happens? He goes to sleep. That's how the Tanakh describes it. He goes to sleep, wakes up in the morning. What happened? The entire camp was dead. And the description is that God's angel came and slaughtered them all. But there were 3 or 4 or 5, depending on which opinion in the Medrash you read, people who escaped, who were not killed. One of those people was Nebuchadnezzar. What did Nebuchadnezzar do? He went back to Assyria, but then he went down to Babylon and he founded the modern Babylonian Empire, modern for then, which then became the Persian Empire. His granddaughter is Vashti. Who marries Vashti? Achashverosh. So is he really a king? No, he's the queen's consort, actually. And because he's the queen's consort, what's the most important thing he needs to do? Can't. Nobody accepts him. So what does he have to do? He has to kill Vashti. The moment you understand why he has to kill Vashti, everything makes sense.
He didn't kill her.
Of course he did. That's exactly what he did. That's the first act of the Megillah.
I thought if like a queen marries a man and the queen dies and not many children.
Right, that he's not supposed to even become the king.
Yeah.
He's supposed to just, but he had enough power. So what he needed Vashti to get into the palace. Once he was in, he made sure to keep it. And this is the background. He's saying he has enough power now that he's considered the king of 127 states, whatever they are.
Why does just killing Vashti give him power?
Because she's gone. He's going to start his own lineage now. That's the way he sees it. He doesn't want people at that level of power. They don't want to have to answer to anyone. And at this point, he still has to answer to Vashti. And that's exactly what's going on. Everybody looks at this and says, like, what's going on? What?
How could he get her killed?
He did. That's what happened. Well, that's exactly what we see. We see the power play between them. He says you should come, and she says, I'm not coming. And so the sages, they tell us in the background what was going on was he's using some kind of law that they had that he could tell the queen to come to his whatever party he was having any way he wanted. There was such a law. There was such a thing. Nobody had ever used it as originally as he did. What did his advisors tell him? Tell her to come naked. Because if you tell her to come naked, she has to do it because the laws of Persia, which by the way were very, very strict. These laws, if you didn't do if you didn't follow, even the king, if he didn't follow what the laws said, he could be killed himself.
There was a naked law?
No, there was a law that she had to come whenever summoned. So he made sure that she would have to come naked. That's the power play between them. And how does it end? That she doesn't want to come, and so she's transgressed the most important law or whatever, and he has the right to kill her, and he does. And he replaces her by who? Nope. It's true that he replaces her by Esther, but that's not who is he looking for? Think about it. He made his way into the palace. Who? Someone? Someone who? He can completely what? Control. So she has to be what?
Unimportant.
That's exactly. Anonymous. She has to be unimportant, anonymous, someone nobody cares about. He has to do that. Now, that's why, in the end, Esther is sent by Mordechai. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because there's a few things we need to see on the way. But that's why Mordechai knew for certain that if Esther would make sure to never say where she's from, who her parents are, what nation she belongs to, she will be selected. It was a no-brainer. All she has to do is make sure that nobody knows who she is, and she doesn't want anything. That's the most important quality that he's looking for, because he wants to secure his power. So he doesn't want anyone breathing down his neck. He doesn't want the queen who he's going to select to be anybody who has any kind of say about how he's going to run his show. He had to choose Esther. That's why Mordechai orchestrated it that way. Okay? It's very important to know that everything, when you look at things politically, everything has a reason. Things don't just happen. When you read it, you think it's a beauty pageant. It's not a beauty pageant. Nobody cares. They're all beautiful. You can make any woman look beautiful. That's not the point. The point, that's how people picture it, but it's got nothing to do with anything. Nothing to do with anything. Because when you're looking at politics, every choice has a power play behind it. Every single choice.
So we only chose Esther
because she was anonymous and wanted nothing. I'm going to read to you the psukim when we get to them. Okay, but if you remember...
I thought it was because her skin was beautiful. No,
yeah, her skin was beautiful. You couldn't tell what part of the world she was from. You couldn't know it. She was... Imagine this. He's got 127 states that are from one end of the world to the other end. Hodu to Kush means basically from Africa all the way to the edge of Asia. And he has to bring... This is always the problem with an empire. By the way, everybody that's worried about the United States, it's because you have such diversity. How do you keep people together? How do you make sure that they don't have one religion? That's the big problem. I don't know if we talked about this ever, but Rome fell apart because of religion. Rome fell apart because of religion, because they were pagans, polytheists. What happens when you have many gods? People fight each other. That's how it works. So if you want to have an empire and you want to run an empire, you have to find something that will unify people. You certainly can't have something that will cause them to fight each other. So he needs to have a queen who cannot be associated in any way with any of these 127 states that he runs. She has to be, the beauty pageant, if you want, it's rigged. He doesn't care what she looks like. It happened to be also that she was 80-something years old, but that's besides the point, right? Because that's her age.
Esther was 80-something.
That's what Chazal say.
So what's the point of marrying her? She can't have any kids.
He didn't want any kids.
She didn't want any.
Why did he want? He didn't want anything from her. All he wanted was a figure to sit next to him.
But he didn't want to continue his lineage?
He will, through however else he figures out to have how he wants to have kids. It turned out in the end. What?
He had room
Didn't they have a kid
people with
together?
women for himself without intimidating.
Right. He
They had a
didn't.
kid together.
But they did. His name is right Dariavish III,
But then she couldn't have
Darius, and he was the one who built the Beis Hamikdash.
She couldn't have been 87.
That's what Chazal say. She was much older than the usual woman that came to this selection process. Okay. So let's read a little bit. Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal house of King Ahasuerus. Why is she making a feast for women? Because she has to preserve something of her power. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he told Mehuman, Bizet, all these advisors, the 7 chamberlains who attended King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, adorned with a royal crown, to show off to the people and officials her beauty. For she was beautiful of appearance. He's using one of the laws. But Queen Vashti refused to come. At the king's command, conveyed by the hand of the chamberlains. It's telling you that the advisors, they have some role there. They say she has to come. It's like a court of law. The king therefore became very enraged, and his wrath burned in him. Then the king spoke to the wise men, those who knew the times, for such was the king's procedure, to turn to all who knew law and judgment. Why? Because he can't just kill her. It has to be official. It has to be that he's going to get rid of her in an official stance. Those closest to him, Karshana, Shatar, and so on. The 7 officers of Persia and Media who had access to the king. These are 7 officers who decide the law, who sat first in the kingdom. They're like the first in command. By the law, what should be done to... It says by the law. It's not my whim. He's not a nutcase. He's very, very balanced, and he knows what he's doing. He says, by the law, what should be done to Queen Vashti for not having obeyed the bidding of the king Ahasuerus? That's what he calls himself. By the hand of the chamberlains, that they agreed that I had the right to do this. Memukan declared before the king and the officials, not only against the king has Queen Vashti done wrong, but against all the officials. It's a state matter. And he adds now something new, all the people in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. Why? Why in all the provinces, 127 provinces, is now a problem? Because if she can do anything she wants, then all the provinces can do anything they want. And that we can't have. For the queen's deed will go forth to all women, making their husbands contemptible in their eyes. He goes further. He says this is not just going to be a problem for the Persian Empire. This is going to become a problem in every single home. Because this is not true. But no, wait a minute. He's saying it's a legal matter. Because now, if the queen has this right to not obey her husband, by extension, again, this is how law works. By extension, this applies to every single household. That every single woman can do whatever she wants against what her husband says. When they will say, King Ahasuerus said to Queen Vashti before him, this is a precedent. She set a precedent. Come to me, and she did not come. And this day the princesses of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's deed will speak of it to all the king's officials, and there will be much contempt and rage, legal rage. If it pleases the king, let there go forth a royal edict from him. Now he tells them, how do you take care of this? You have to have an executive order from the king. A royal edict. And let it be written into the laws of Persia and Media. The first thing we need to do is to write into it that it not be revoked, that Vashti never again appear before King Ahasuerus. First of all, she can never come. They don't say kill her. They first of all, what's the punishment? Right. We're making a law from now on. Vashti, there's a special law, executive order just for Vashti. She can never come again before the king. Why? Why is it so important that she can't come before the king? No. What did Esther do when she wasn't called before the king? She went anyway. Because you had a right. There was a right that you could, if you were a queen or something like that, you had the right to show up uncalled for.
He took away her right.
So he took away that right from her. Why? Because it was customary, it wasn't a law, but it was custom, that if somebody exercised that right to show up before you, you were supposed to pardon them. And he doesn't want that to happen. He doesn't want her to suddenly show up. Now she's going to come, and he's going to have to pardon her. So what did he gained nothing from this whole charade. So he makes a law, she can't come. He can never extend her the, the scepter and pardon her. That won't happen. And if it's like that, and let the king confer her royal estate upon another who is better than she. Now, since she can't fulfill her duties, she can't be pardoned, she can never fulfill her duties as the queen, because she can't come before him, she can't be seen next to him, so you have to find someone else. Then the king's... What?
Was it after the law was still applied when Esther was queen?
Yes, it was still there. Vashti couldn't come, but not Esther.
Oh,
Specifically Vashti.
Happy birthday to you.
We're going to delay our excitement for... 30 more minutes. And then everything will explode in volcanic joy. Okay. So, and then the king's decree, which he will proclaim, shall be heard throughout all his kingdom, great though it be, and all the wives will show respect to their husbands, great and small alike. This proposal, it's a proposal, really, really a proposal. They sat down beforehand and they decided what would be the best way to deal with her. So this proposal was favorable in the eyes of the king and the officials, and the king did according to the words of Memucan. And he sent letters into all the king's provinces, because when you change a law, when you make a law in Persia, you have to understand, these empires, they worked because they had great bureaucracy. Half the Megillah is telling us about bureaucracy. It's not different than working in the world today.
What does bureaucracy mean?
Bureaucracy means that everything that we do has to be documented, basically. Everything, it's documentation. A bureau is like a drawer. It's somewhere where you put files. What do you do? Anything the kingdom bought, any treaty it made, any law, I think has to be documented in some way. The whole reason we have the Megillah is because they wanted this as a document about what had happened in these years. By the way, how long does the Megillah take? Everybody is very surprised to hear this.
I think it's like a few days.
It sounds like a few days, maybe a couple of weeks. A couple of years, maybe. How many? 12 years. The Megillah spans 12 years.
Who wrote the Megillah?
Mordechai and Esther wrote it, but they wrote it as part of the Chronicles of Persia. So that's why it doesn't include Hashem's name. It couldn't include Hashem's name because they no, that's commentary. We're talking about the politics. This is a political document. You have to read it like one. First of all, you have to read it, the Pshat. The Pshat is a political document. It's telling you about things that happened, and it has to fit how things are done. Have you ever read the protocol from a court? So everything is very formal. There's a formal language you use in law. There's a formal language you use when you're running an empire and you document things. So they're using that language. So this proposal was favorable and so on. And what happened to her? What happened to her? Doesn't say. We think she was killed.
Doesn't say whatever happened to her.
It doesn't say she was killed. She just couldn't perform her.
Why do we say that?
What?
And why do we teach that? Why do we say that?
Good question. In the Megillah it doesn't say. It doesn't say that.
What does it say?
What could she be? She could be an old spinster living in some castle somewhere. We don't know. Because it doesn't say anywhere that she has to be killed or anything like that.
Did she just not mention at a certain point? Did she just stop mentioning her?
She's gone. She's not. She's nowhere. She's nowhere to be found. She disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? Again, could be she's alive, but she is no longer a force that he has to take into account. She's gone from the scene. She's not in politics anymore. That's really what's done in politics. Politicians hate to kill people because it's always bad. They would rather get rid of them in some way. So he got rid of her. He didn't have to kill her. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It doesn't really matter. Maybe 2 months later when nobody remembered this, she was run over by a bus. Who knows? Nobody knows.
Doesn't have any power as the king.
Right, because she can't come before him. She can't perform any of her duties. And the law went out that she has to be replaced. They have to give her position to someone better than her. That's all. So after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Not to kill her. He didn't say to kill her. Just decreed. She can't take part in politics anymore. Then the king's attendants said, "Let there be sought for the king young maidens of beautiful appearance, and let the king appoint commissioners in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they gather together every young maiden of beautiful appearance to Shushan the capital, to the harem under the charge of Haggai, the king's chamberlain, guardian of the women, and let their cosmetics be given them. Then let the girl who pleases the king reign in place of Vashti." And the matter pleased the king, and he did so. So now we got a little bit ahead of ourselves. We said Mordechai now knows exactly what he needs to do. I mean, this is how you deal with these things. You have an opening, you get in. Because we're now in exile. And we know that the only way we're going to survive is if we have, let's call them, confidants in the palace. And the best thing, Mordechai thinks, is to have a confidant who is the queen. Even though she doesn't have any real power, because Achashverosh is never going to give her real power. But who knows? Who knows what she can do? And he tells her the one thing that she needs to do. One thing only. What does she need to do? Not mention. The girl was pleasing in his eyes, and she, oh no, it's not that. Okay, it is right after that. Esther had not told of her people or her kindred, for Mordechai had instructed her not to tell. And that's all that needs to be done. Because, like we said, he needs someone who is neutral, who is not connected to any of the 127 provinces, states, whatever he has. She can't say who she is, she can't say what religion she is, she can't even say her name. So what does she call herself? Esther. How I mean, the guy doesn't know Hebrew, so he doesn't know what it means. Right? But what does it mean? I'm hidden. It's like a joke. What's my name? Esther. What does it mean? It means I'm not telling you.
Hiding randomly is nice.
What?
Like hiding randomly.
Right. Her real name is Hadassah. But that's what she calls herself, so that day after day Mordechai would walk about in front of the courtyard of the harem to learn about Esther's well-being and what would become of her. What was Mordechai at this stage? We don't know. We don't know what his position is. Does he have a position? All we know is that he's a Jewish man living in Shushan. That's all we know so far. And he walks every day to see what's going on with her. When each maiden's turn arrived to come to King Achashverosh, after having been treated according to the law prescribed for women, listen to this is all legal speak. There's a law that says what you have to give her. It's all very, very bureaucratic. For 12 months, for so was the prescribed length of their anointing accomplished. 6 months with oil of myrrh. And what's myrrh, by the way? Anybody here called Mushka? She just left. Anybody else? She missed it. Mushka is myrrh. Right? Everybody knows that. It's that spice. It's the spice called myrrh. Musia. Musia is musk. Musk is made from myrrh. And 6 M-Y-R-R-H. R-R-H. And 6 months with perfumes and feminine cosmetics. And when the girl came in this manner to the king, she was given whatever she requested to accompany her from the harem to the king's palace. Why? It doesn't say this was the law. Why did they give her anything she wanted? Because he wants to see, what does she want? When you tell someone, tell me what you want. Anything you want, tell me. You have a window into their desires, what they want to achieve. Say that to anyone. Tell me what your fantasy is. What do you want? I now know you better than you know yourself. Don't share your fantasies with other people. I'm telling you, don't share them. Unless you are 100% confident that this person wants your best. Don't ever share them, because when you show that, you've given your deepest, darkest, sometimes lightest, doesn't matter, part of your soul to someone else. And you have to be very careful with it. But that's exactly what they did with these girls. They wanted to see. So what does she want? Now we know. What happened with Esther? Now when the turn came for Esther, daughter of Avichail, uncle of Mordechai, who he had adopted as his daughter, to come to the king, she requested nothing. She's a genius. She knows Psychology 101. When somebody tells you, tell me what you want, anything you want, I'll give it to you. What do you answer? Nothing, I don't need anything. I have everything I need. And then she adds to that, and she flips the table, she turns the tables on them. And she says to them, she requested nothing except that which Chagai, the king's chamberlain, guardian of the women, had advised. So what does she do? She says, I want what you want. She completely flips it. She's a genius. How many people know how to do that? They get the opportunity to get anything they want, and they say, what I want is what you want. And so what does she now know? What he wants. It's ingenious. This is how you play politics.
It can sound like not realistic.
It's what?
It can sound like not realistic.
Non-realistic? Why? This is a reality. This is how politics works. This is the reality of the Megillah, not the fanciful Purim spiel that goes around it, but what's really going on. So Esther would find favor in the eyes of all who saw her. Why do you find favor in someone's eyes? Because what's the easiest way to find favor in someone's eyes? When it says that Noach found favor in Hashem's eyes, what does it mean? What does favor mean? Favor is grace, actually. V'Noach matzah chen. Esther motzet chen. What does chen mean? Chen. What does that mean? Huh? That's how they translate it. Favor, grace. What does it mean? Not what is. It's a type of beauty. There are 8 synonyms for beauty in Hebrew. This is the 8th. There's an order for them also. This is the 8th that corresponds to Malchus. And it means symmetry. What does it mean? What do I mean by symmetry? There's beauty in symmetry. But the symmetry that we're talking about is that whatever you do, I mirror back to you. That's the symmetry. Why does Hashem like Noach? Because everything Hashem says, Noach mirrors back to him. He does exactly what Hashem wants from him. Why does Esther find favor in everybody's eyes? Because she mirrors back. He says to her, Chagai says, what do you want? What does she say? Whatever you want. That's what it means to find favor in someone's eyes. You find favor in someone's eyes when you mirror them back to themselves. You give them back themselves. Whatever they want, you give it back. And that's how Esther conducts herself the whole time. She's the perfect Malchus. That's how kingdom is supposed to be. Our king is supposed to mirror who? Hashem. That's exactly what a king is. That's what he's supposed to. He's supposed to mirror something. What does BB mirror? Supposedly the population. Supposedly the majority of the population. The king or the person who's in charge is supposed to be in some way a mirror of something. The question is, what is he mirroring? If you're only mirroring the people, that's called that you're following the people. If you're mirroring God, it means that you're godly. It's a different thing altogether. So anyway, Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace. Listen to when this is. When did he have the feast that we began with Vashti? What year was that of his reign? The 3rd year. This is happening in the month of Teves, in the 7th year of his reign. So it's been 4 years until he finally meets Esther. So 4 years, 7 years. The Megillah so far has been 7 years. The king loved Esther more than all the women, and she found more favor and kindness before him than all the other maidens. Why? Because we said already, she's a perfect match. She is exactly what he needs. She comes wanting nothing. She comes anonymous. She comes without anything. Nobody knows who she is. Nobody knows where she came from. She's perfect. Great. The king made a great banquet for all his officers and the servants. It was Esther's banquet. And he proclaimed an amnesty for the provinces. Why? Why an amnesty for the provinces? Why does he suddenly say, okay, you guys are free to do whatever you want tonight? Why? He found his wife. He doesn't care about his wife. He doesn't care about Esther. Why does he do that? What does he want? A politician doesn't do anything unless he gains something from it. What does he want? For Esther. And he wants to see if anyone's going to come and say, wait a minute, we have a special relationship with her. Because she's actually from our province. And nobody came and did that. So he made some kind of ploy. Everybody had a chance to express their opinion about Esther. Nobody said anything special. So he knows this is real. This woman has no affinity. She's not connected to anything. It's perfect. And when the maidens were gathered together the second time, Why the second time? Why did he gather maidens together a second time? What for? And Mordechai sat at the king's gate. Esther still told nothing of her kindred or her people, as Mordechai had instructed her, for Esther continued to obey Mordechai just as when she was reared by him. What in the world is this talking about? What do you mean a second time? We just had the selection of the queen. Why a second time? And why does it say now that Mordechai is sitting at the king's gate? What does that even mean? So have you heard, anybody here, I assume, some of you have heard of, what's it called? Tale of Fire and Ice, no? What's it called? Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
What do they call the main city there? I think it's what it's called. King's Gate. I think it's called King's Gate.
Oh, yeah.
And I once saw the book and I looked at the beginning and there's a map there. What does King's Gate mean? King's Gate is not someone sitting at this door here. If this was the king's palace, he's not sitting at the door. King's Gate is where the chamberlains sit. It's the place where all the power is. Mordechai became a chamberlain. He became a powerful man there. Remember, when did Esther start all this?
In the third year.
Sometime between the 3rd and 7th year. And at that time, Mordechai was still nothing special. And in the interim, until she's made queen and so on and so forth, he becomes part of the king's gate. To become part of the king's gate means you're one of the foremost advisors. You're sitting there. And so he has a say in the palace already. So what is Mordechai's interest in having a second beauty pageant, let's call it? This time it's only maidens, it's not women. Why?
He's trying to get Esther out.
He doesn't want to get her out. He got her in. But what does he want to do? No, he's in contact with her every day. What does he need to prevent her from having to do?
Be with
Exactly. So he needs to ensure that there's a second round of choices, and this time Achashverosh takes whoever he wants, and that's who he's going to be with. And he's going to leave Esther alone. Esther's the queen by title, but she's never with him. That's what he wants, because she's his daughter. He doesn't want her to be with this guy. He wants to save her from it. So it stands to reason he organized it. What?
his wife.
That's what Chazal say, that they were married. That's a whole story in and of itself. But again, that's Chazal. I want to understand the politics here. Okay? In those days, while Mordechai was sitting at the king's gate, he's an advisor, what happens? Bigtan and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains of the guardians of the threshold, became enraged and sought to send their hand against King Ahasuerus. They want to kill him. The matter became known to Mordechai. How did he know? Because he's in the palace. He's not just sitting at the king's gate hearing gossip. He's part of the palace. Who told it to Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordechai's name. The matter was investigated and found to be true, and they were both hanged on a gallows. It was recorded in the book of Chronicles in the king's presence. Why didn't Mordechai let them kill him? Because he's playing politics. He's not interested.
A reason for Ahasuerus to pay him back.
Right? That's how you play politics. Yeah, do me a favor, now I owe you. Now, Ahasuerus doesn't want to owe anyone. So what does he do? He doesn't say, okay, I'll remember I owe you. What does he say? You'll get written in the book of Chronicles. That's enough for you. But how does the book of Chronicles work? So we learn later on that the book of Chronicles is where you bury stuff. But if for some reason it's read before the king has to do something with it. It's where you bury who you owe stuff to. Okay, it's there. I owe you. It's like it's on the book somewhere. But unless the king actually sees it, he doesn't have to do anything with it. But perchance, or by Ishgacha, suddenly he does have to repay Mordechai. But this is politics. Now comes the real question. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, son of Hamdata the Agagite, and elevated him. He set his seat above all the officers who were with him, and all the king's servants at the king's gate. Now you understand that they have to be the king's servants. They're his chamberlains. They're the ones who are closest to him. And where are they sitting? At the king's gate. Haman is now made, he's maybe even taking Mordechai's place. We don't know. And Ahasuerus says that he's above everyone, and everybody has to bow down and prostrate themselves before Haman, for so had the king commanded concerning him. But Mordechai would not bow and would not prostrate himself. So the king's servants were at the king's gate, said to Mordechai, why do you disobey the king's command? Who is this Haman guy? Where did he come from? You never know. That's how politics is. You never know where these people show up from. Suddenly, this guy comes and he shuffles the whole deck.
He wasn't like a different advisor?
We don't know where he came from. He may have been there before. He may have been there. Chazal say that he was there already before. We don't have any record of him. But that's how politics works. Suddenly there's this joker that you don't know where he came from, and he suddenly gets a lot of power, and you have to deal with it. For Mordechai, this is a real challenge. So Mordechai right away says, I don't know where you parachuted in from, Mr. Haman, but this is not how things work here. What do you mean it's not how things work? I have my own opinions. Because that's how politics is. I'm an advisor, you're an advisor. Let's see who Ahasuerus listens to. What is the only way you can get rid of someone like this? What is the only way you can get rid of them? You have to get the king to turn against either Mordechai or against Haman. It's got to be one or the other. Mordechai is going to push this so that Ahasuerus turns against Haman, because that's the only way to solve these problems. So you have an advisor who is against the Jewish people, you have one who's a Jew. The only way you can make this work is if you get the other guy out. How do you do that? Only if the king turns against him. So now Mordechai is going to do a lot of... So first of all, you don't back down. That's the first thing. You don't come and you say, oh, now you're in favor, the king likes you, so I'm going to just fold and accept it. Mordechai knows too much is at stake. We don't know. We have to control the situation. The only way you can fight this is if you fight it. You can't. This is a real lesson in politics. You cannot be challenged and not challenge back. If you are challenged and you fold, you're finished. That's how it works. So Mordechai, the moment that Ahasuerus loves Haman more than anyone else, no one knows why, no one has any clue, but he's suddenly parachuted in or not parachuted in, he's lifted up, whatever it is, Mordechai has to say, I'm not folding against you. And if it means that we're going to have Ahasuerus decide between the two of us, so be it. That's how politics is. Politics is a fight to the death. And especially in those times, where it really meant that one of them was going to die. You have to understand, the moment that Mordechai did this, he was putting his head on the chopping, right? He's ready to be chopped off. If he doesn't win, he's going to die. He doesn't have anything up his sleeve. That's how you play politics, especially in these empires. So you have to understand that he did something very brave here. Now what happened when they said this to him day after day and he did not heed them, you see that nobody killed Mordechai on the spot. So they told Haman to see whether Mordechai's words would prevail. What were Mordechai's words? That it's either me or him. So let's see who it is. For he had told them that he was a Jew. So people know that Mordechai is a Jew. That's not a secret. And he says, look, I'm not here for myself.